warfare is changing. Mm-hmm. It's changing very rapidly. I think we're seeing a without getting into all the woke BS that's happening, I think we're seeing a shift in the military. And I think that I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, but I think that guys like myself, former SEALs, just on the ground, special operations operators, I think that we're becoming obsolete and that tech is taking over the battlefield. I think cyber security or cyber warfare is going to be, I mean, we're already seeing it. I mean, just the progression from the wars that we've been in, over in Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, Pakistan, Iraq, all these places. I mean, you saw AC-130 Spectre gunships turn into drones, turn into unmanned drones, and the tech that I saw at the beginning when I first started. I think my first time in a war zone was in 2005, and to watch it, how it developed into 2015 when I left, I mean, I didn't even recognize, it wasn't even the same thing, And anyways, what I'm getting at is this cyber warfare stuff is becoming more and more and more real. And the way you were describing how China and Russia does it versus the U.S., I mean, that's pretty alarming. And then the military conference that you just sat through, where they were recruiting hackers for the U.S. Army, and they were talking about numbers. I mean, just go into all of that.
So, the cool thing is I would really like it if warfare was just conducted by robots. I mean, because then none of your friends would die in battle. Like, you basically just have a ton of junk that's just firing stuff at each other, and that the stakes obviously in cyber war, when you're attacking nuclear power plants or any of that type of stuff, if you're not making them melt down, and irradiating human population, there's probably somewhat of an advantage to having UAVs, and countermeasures against UAVs and fighting each other. 'Cause, then again, it's just people probably just handling joysticks or artificial intelligence doing the fighting. So it may be another mature form of warfare in a sense, but where the human cost is lessened. It's probably not the way it's going to go. There's always like these civilian casualties that happen, and I don't think that soldiers are going to go away in that sense. But
let me rephrase this. What I was really getting at was how hacking is becoming so relevant in today's warfare.
Yeah. So what I was getting into is that a lot of the equipment, even that operators are taking in, like with smart HUDs and like how helicopters, they can fly like pretty much where you're looking, and the gunner can just kind of look, and the gun points to where they're looking. And there's just that everything is warfare so technology based now that inherently, the ability to control and, if you're able to hack those systems, like I said, even in the supply chain or, saboteur or remotely, because all this stuff, the drones and everything have to be controlled somewhere, and wireless communications, that's what's nuts, is wide spectrum jamming will always work. Like, you can do things like frequency shift keying and spectrum hopping and stuff, but realistically, like that, if you don't have a wire, so the tow missile, attached to the actual thing itself that's feeding it any type of telemetry or instructions, then it's going to be subject to some sort of electronic warfare. And part of the problem is that in America, like the way that we've traditionally treated, our hackers hasn't been favorable. Whereas, I just the trend I noticed, like with China and Russia, they're basically able to use the United States as a playing ground, and they don't suffer any consequences for it. And so they're learning against the best systems. They're sharpening, they're against the whetstone of America, and the systems that we have. And meanwhile, I don't think we are practicing in the same way, against them. It's not like it's asymmetric as far as like how these things are getting handled. When it comes down to it, though, that's one. What's really strange is that hackers themselves, like, we don't really exist with borders. A lot of us don't really think of ourselves as part of a country. Again, if it's kind of like, soccer or, football or something like that, like, we're part of a team, like we are, but in a sense, we all are in the same league. There's these rivalries that maybe, they don't bubble up so much. I said within the hacker community, there's Russian friends of mine, I have Chinese friends of mine, type things. And I don't think we really see it as there's animosity, but in the event of if a full scale war broke out, like, we all kind of know, it's said like the Olympics, you kind of know which country you're going to be fighting for, type thing. But I can just, again, the development of the skill set, and like, we have very, very good hackers here domestically, but internationally, I said amongst our allies, I also see strong hackers, but that there's just more of a, I think, what would you say, predisposition or encouragement, I would say, over there for adversarial mindset and thinking and doing these scams and stuff that's present in Russia and China, that we don't have that in our DNA the same way. And so there's a certain way that they're doing things that I just don't think we can replicate without a complete paradigm shift in how we treat computer security, how we educate on computer security, because they just have, even their hobbyists are of a, they're employing way more personnel in their military than we are. We have contractors and stuff to back it up, but as you mentioned, I said, if I don't know if my figures are correct, but there was an Army recruiter that had come to talk at this hacker convention and was just basically begging, like, please come to the military if you think you can hack or want to hack for the military. And just looking at the numbers, I said, I think it was around 1,500. I think they had like 1,000 enlisted and 500 officer corps in the Army cyber group. And that's abysmally low if you think about the amount of coverage that we would have to have.
I mean, you were saying the tech company that employs you currently has way
more, and that's a private
1,500
company. Yeah, and
hackers.
So I mean, again, across Space Force, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Army, like, branches, I don't know what the total tally of cyber operators is, but the other thing that is crazy is that the private sector is insanely more lucrative than government work. And so I make insane amounts of money where I work, and the financial incentive, in the military, I'm sure is not super great. So that's the other kind of barrier to entry a little bit, is that the talent isn't necessarily going to be drawn naturally unless you have a some super sense of duty or something to go into the military to do this type of work. But as I said, if the gauntlet was thrown down and it was called up, I'm fighting for America. Like, I'm going to do my part.